We are back live here on the Cowboys Report. I am Tom Downey, Stone Shields, behind the scenes for today's live show. We'll break down all the latest on the Dallas Cowboys before we get to the Combine next week. Before we get going, in general, when it comes to the offseason, free agency, draft, or trades, if you think the Cowboys will be aggressive, what side of the ball do you think needs more help for the Dallas Cowboys? O for the offense, D for the defense. Both sides need help. It is emphasis on the more side of the ball. So let me know. O for offense, D for defense. Let me know in the comment section of today's show. 60% right now voting on the offensive side, 40% on the defensive side. Both is obviously the correct answer, but which side needs more of it? You might be able to even talk me into the starting side needs more help on offense, like you need a running back, you need a number 2 receiver, you might need another offensive lineman. But depth-wise, defensively is where you need the most help because you need multiple defensive tackles. You probably want a linebacker. You want cornerback help. You need probably another edge rusher given your free agency status. So which side of the ball needs more help? I don't even know if there's a wrong answer here necessarily because the arguments would be you need this and that, and all of those things are true. So O for offense, D for defense. Munoz got D. BRY Nation. Richard Allen say O. Lonnie says no. Cowboy Rob says defense. Let's see. Both. But both is the right answer. You need plenty there. B for both. Eugene says B. Which it's if you want to type B, it's fine. It's the coward's way out, but it's not wrong necessarily either. Mentioned these spots. You need a number 2 receiver. You need a number 1 back, probably number 2 back with Rico, a free agent as well. But by the way, there's not a wrong answer. So vote in the comment section and vote in the pinned poll on today's show. O for offense, D for defense. Speaking of defense, what is the percent chance you think that the Dallas Cowboys end up re-signing Osa Odighizuwa? Let me know in the comments of today's show. I still have some doubts that he's actually going to get $20 million a year. I know that number has been a very popular one. Most of it's what the PFF projections are, and Spotrac is not that dissimilar either. But if it's like 16, 17, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to pay a defensive lineman who, I like him. I think he's good. I'm paying great money, though, to a good player, and that does worry me a little bit. Although you've passed on other players that same bucket, so maybe you can afford it there. Or you can take the $16 million and get, 3 Eric Kendricks players at defensive tackle and linebacker. That's noteworthy to me. Let's see. 37% from Ecuador Man, 50, 10, 80% from Beast JRVR. 80 Ace is 5%. Noah's is 0.69. Nice. Appreciate that. More 80s coming in. Chris Romero's got 60. Sack77 says 70. Zachary Reeder says 70 as well. 75%, 88%. Get the comments coming. Percent chance think the Cowboys end up re-signing Osa Odighizuwa. 75%, 88%, 85%, 65%, 50, 50. I'd be a little bit disappointed because I finally got to spell his name properly on the first try every time. And might not be there. 73%, 95% from Brandon. Wow, that's quite high up there. I'm not sure it's that high. I think it might be at best 50-50, and I think they'll let him test the open market, and he comes back to, hey, I got this offer. Are you going to match? And go from there. 70%, 73% as well, 95, 50 in there from Juan. All right, we will talk free agency on today's show. So who is a free agent that you guys want the Cowboys to sign? Let's try to keep it realistic. I would love to throw a bag at T. Higgins. They're obviously not going to because I don't think the Bengals are going to let him leave anyway. Keep it semi-realistic. Even if it's a bit on the upper echelon of what the Cowboys are willing to pay, let's make that happen. Logan says Osa will be with Dan Quinn this season. Okay, that means they're cutting Jonathan Allen. I'll just sign Allen. I think he's better anyway. I'll just do that. Cheaper. That's fine. They can do that. Will Hernandez, good one there. Amari Cooper. I am on board the Puna 4 train. I've been on that train for years, and I would like to make it happen this time around because then I feel so much better about my nose guard spot. And I can go sign Osa or sign a different 3 technique and draft a 3 technique too. That I love the idea of Puna Ford as like a realistic option. Kupp, Diggs, Kupp, Diggs, Javon Holland, another Poona Ford, Amari Cooper, Diggs, Dobbins, and Wagner. I think he just goes back to Seattle in the end. Deebo Samuel, Stephon Diggs, Josh Sweat. He'll probably be a bit too expensive. Super Bowl winning pass rusher who's been really good is probably going to get paid. Nick Chubb, I think, would be affordable at running back. I'm not worried about the money involved. I'm worried about, like, does he bounce back? Because he was bad last year. And it's coming off the injury. So it worked for Dobbins, though. So last year, I think Chubb's an option. Diggs, we got a Johnny Manziel comment in there. Always fun. Alternate universe where the Cowboys draft Johnny Manziel would have been really interesting. Not in a good way, but it would have been interesting. Dre Greenlaw, I like that one. Another Dre Greenlaw in there. Ryan Kelly. I don't know if he might retire. And if he doesn't retire, I think he stays in Indy in the end. T. Higgins. Matt Collins is a name we mentioned on the offensive targets list of, like, if you just want to sign somebody and still be open to drafting a player as, like, dirty work receiver who's cheap, kind of like how Noah Brown was, I think that's kind of noteworthy. As a very, like, not sexy, but, like, okay, I get what you're going for name. Joey Bosa in there. Charvarius Ward, offensive line. O-line in general. I'm down with that one. Ward's interesting because I don't know what his market's going to look like after missing so much time after the tragedy he had this year. If he's cheap, I'm very interested because that, like, stabilizes my cornerback room in a really, really good way. Lucid Chart 32. Would you sign Osa or Milton Williams? I think there is something to say, as much as I hate when the Cowboys do it, to signing someone who you know kind of works in your offense or defense, and, like, you know the person really well. I still think that if you're just looking at, like, Osa versus Milton Williams, I kind of thought that Milton Williams was a better player, especially from an efficiency standpoint this year. Neither guy's a great run defender, frankly. Williams is even about the same size as Osa. I think they're relatively similar players, but I do think Williams is a slightly better one, so I'd probably prefer him if we're just doing who's better. Now, the correct answer there is maybe he's cheaper. And I don't know if he's actually going to be cheaper. Sometimes the projections we can get from, like, Spotrac, Over the Cap, PFF are valuable. Sets like a good relative figure. Doesn't mean they'll always be cheaper. They never bat 100% on those. And even stuff like their nickel corner projections are just flat out wrong. Like, it's just because they don't separate it in any of their algorithms from, like, outside corner to nickel corner, even though there's a very big difference with how those numbers are paid out at this point. If you guys love the Dallas Cowboys like I do, if you are Stockholm Syndrome like us as well, help us out. Like the video for me right now. Free, simple, easy to do. So please and thank you, everyone who likes the show here at the Cowboys Report. Coming up live, we'll break down some Cowboys news. Several notable tidbits from the coaching staff I want to break down after they spoke, some of the lesser members, or not head coach members, I should say. Look through a variety of cut candidates from The Athletic and NFL.com who could be targets if they are released into free agency for the Cowboys. A mailbag. Get your questions in right now via hashtag NFL or skip the line altogether in Super Chat. And we'll break down some free agent targets on defense. All coming up here live on the Cowboys Report. On today's Cowboys, we are breaking down the news on Micah Parsons' role this upcoming season. A potential Mazi Smith, fingers crossed, breakout. The future of Osa Odighizuwa, and some Tyler Guyton hope after the assistant coaches all spoke with media on Wednesday. Now, good news, we have overtaken in one day the 250 subscriber deficit we faced against the Commanders. We have the lead now. Let's bury them. Hit that sub button for more free Cowboys videos each and every single day, including coverage from this year's NFL Combine. Speaking with Micah Parsons, and again, this should not be a surprise in any capacity, but Matt Eberflus says Dallas will use Micah Parsons as a pass rusher, obviously. Here's what Flus said. Mike is a premier pass rusher. We're going to use him that way, certainly, and he's one heck of an athlete that can do a lot of different things for us on defense. And when you have a guy like that, you want to be able to utilize his skill set. As we're around him more, we'll see what the skill set is and take advantage of it. He knows that we'll just make him in the best light that he can be in terms of position, pass rush and really utilizing what he does best, and that is rushing the passer. This shouldn't surprise anybody, and it's right. You don't have players very often who, over the past 4 years, have led the NFL in pressures and led the NFL in pressure rate and have had at least 12 sacks every single season. And by the way, he had 12 sacks in 13 games, and he will again be among the top contenders for Defensive Player of the Year. And if he can stay healthy and the defense isn't terrible down the stretch this year, he might win it this time. This is obvious, but it's a no-brainer. It's what you want Matt Eberflus to say. It's what he's supposed to say. You still need to see it implemented, but he hasn't had a talent like Micah Parsons before. So I'm excited to see how he uses him. Let's talk Mazi Smith. Matt Eberflus, again, had some, I would actually argue, rather optimistic comments and an answer and expectation for Mazi Smith this year when asked about him. He said, yeah, I'm excited about Mazi. I liked him coming out of Michigan. He's a real explosive athlete with a big body that can move really well. Excited about bringing his game to the next level, and he could certainly do that. So the expectation here is a bit of a breakout season for Mazi Smith, which, look, it's not like there's a lot of room to be significantly worse. And that is what has to happen for Mazi Smith as we enter year 3. We've seen in years past defensive linemen have taken a little bit longer to grow and adjust in the NFL. Go look at how long it took Quinnen Williams to get going. How about Osa, who we'll talk about here in a little bit? Took him a little bit longer to develop into the guy he is right now. I thought down the stretch last year, we saw significantly better run defense out of Mazi Smith. The pass rush wasn't as good. I think part of that is what was being asked of him from Mike Zimmer compared to Dan Quinn, and Flus kind of fits in a little bit more in the middle. Now, if you don't have confidence in Mazi, I get that. I think to an extent the blind faith department is kind of maxed out for us Cowboys fans. But do you think Mazi Smith will have a breakout season? Y for yes, N for no. It's the pinned comment on today's show. So if the ad break comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. Matt Eberflus having some praise and excitement for Mazi Smith shouldn't be a surprise. Because on one hand, it would be very weird if a new coach was anything but positive about one of his new players who he doesn't have a real relationship with. Because that's just not how you handle any relationship in life. We do know, however, that Mazi Smith is a great athlete, that he has some rare height, weight, speed combinations, even though it has not been put together yet on the field. And we saw him play better down the stretch this past season. I think a big thing for Mazi Smith is have a normal offseason. Think about it. Coming into his first season, he's got he's got training for the combine and all that other stuff, and it's a bit disjointed for a young guy. And last year he was rehabbing the entire time. And I think he even saw as he went on, he got really better conditioning as the year went on. I do worry about him learning another scheme because he had the Michigan scheme, Dan Quinn, to Mike Zimmer, to Matt Eberflus. That's 3 brand new schemes in as many years, 4 schemes total in 4 years. That's a lot. I think there is reason to have hope that Mazi Smith can be a much better version and start to look a little bit more like a non-bust. I also don't want to assume a breakout happens. We know what happens when you assume, and something I probably shouldn't say here on YouTube. But you need to have a viable insurance plan, a viable starting caliber option along at the nose guard spot. That's not just, hey, we signed a guy off the street in August. That's not a real plan. Today's show is made possible by PrizePicks. It is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. Anyone else excited for the Four Nations finale tonight? Canada versus USA. You can get in on the Four Nations action on PrizePicks as well. This is what the couple of puck bros here at Chat Sports cooked up. McDavid, less than shots on goal. I think it's Hellebuck. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Connor Hellebuck, the USA goalie, more than saves. And Matthew Tkachuk, more than a half point as well. I'm doing the flex play, so if I get one wrong, I still come out on top. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Now, sticking with defensive line, I do think Matt Eberflus's answer on Osa Odighizuwa was kind of like, okay, really? Because he kind of was asked about him again and said, certainly Osa's a guy that we liked a lot. He's a good player for us. But look at other guys too. We're in the middle of that process right now. It's about getting the depth on the defensive line that we need. There are some good pieces there to work from. It's exciting to be able to look at that in the future in terms of the draft and acquiring other players that are special talent guys. We're excited to get that done. So was that Matt Eberflus, or did like Stephen Jones throw his voice in Matt Eberflus's mouth? Because that's what it sounds like to me. Like, you went very quickly from like, yeah, we love Osa too, but draft. Like, very quickly. And that was very much a non-answer. And the way I interpret it, and look, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Would not be the first time. Probably won't be the last time. The way I read that is, yeah, he's probably going to leave in free agency and get more money. Which wouldn't surprise me. Now, look, you've got Denzel Daxon, Mazi Smith, and Justin Rogers right now on your roster. You got like one reliable player. Like, that's it. So, and Mazi, reliable, is pushing it, frankly. Osa had 4.5 sacks this year. The pressures were really high. The quarterback hits were high. I think this is an ascending player. It is a guy I would like to retain if the money's right. I don't think the money's going to be right. I have my doubts Dallas would, if that $20 million number is true, we'll find out in about a month. I have some doubts there as well. But I have my doubts Dallas wants to pay him that because I don't want to pay him that. I think he's a good player. He is by far your best defensive lineman. You need to have a plan in place to replace Osa if you lose him in the open market. But I don't know if I want to give him $20 million. That's just a lot for, I think, is a good but by no means elite player. So what do you think is the percent chance the Cowboys re-sign Osa Odighizuwa? Let me know in the comment section of today's show. Also speaking was new offensive line coach Connor Riley, who also seemingly has high hopes for left tackle Tyler Guyton, who, we can say it, did not have a very good first season. Here's what Connor Riley had to say. I see a tremendous talent who has quite honestly not been playing a lot of the offensive line. The sky is truly the limit for a young man like that. There's going to be a process. There's going to be a whole lot to it. There's going to be a lot of work that's going to be involved with it. He and I are getting to know one another, but he has a tremendous skill set. I'm really excited for him to get to work with him. The biggest issue for Guyton was he turned into a big-time penalty boy last year, and you can't have that. Now, like with all penalties, not all of them were accurate, but you can't have it. I think at times, you had borderline confidence issues on Tyler Guyton where he just didn't. It's tough for a player to go play and then get benched after a mistake, and then go play again and then get benched, and then the other guys like Adoga makes a mistake and the Cowboys don't care, and that's really weird to me. Didn't understand that, frankly. The physical talent is there. That doesn't mean he'll be able to put it all together. So if you have concerns on him, I get that. I think to an extent, not everyone wanted Guyton to be drafted, and that often leads to lower confidence levels. So what is your confidence level in Tyler Guyton? Scale it for me from 1 to 10. 1 on the low end, 10 on the high end. Patrick Walker reports that the Cowboys plan to keep Tyler Guyton at left tackle. I want to see if that remains the plan after the draft, depending on what ends up happening with free agency and the roster moves you actually make. But I know not everyone will agree with me. I actually have no issues doing that. I get that Guyton played right tackle at Oklahoma. He played left tackle before that, too, even at Oklahoma when he was a backup. Guyton had issues last year. He's still a bit of a lunger and a head dropper, and the penalties. All of his issues, which there were too many, they are all fixable, however. And those issues are still there if you put him on the right side of the offensive line. They don't suddenly go away. That's not how his issues in particular work. Guyton was a raw, high upside draft pick who I think we all would have felt a lot better about if you had a more established veteran left tackle in there to start for you. He needs development. Everyone knew that going in. He needs reps. He needs time. The single biggest thing for Guyton right now, got to stay healthy. You can't get reps. You can't get development, and you can't get time if you're as banged up as he was last year. That, I think, is an underrated element of concern as it relates to Tyler Guyton. There's a lot riding on him this season. Hopefully, the combo of Clayton Adams, Connor Riley, and getting rid of, football bad man, last offensive line coach ends up being a positive thing for you, Mike Solari. And hopefully it leads to better development for Guyton, because there's a lot riding on him, because you can't miss on a first-round pick at offensive tackle when, in the Cowboys' case, They haven't missed on that spot in that round in a kind of a long time. Couple super chats to get to here. From Mark, Osa is decent but overrated. A pass rush specialist with 3 sacks a season. Problem is we had poor defensive line drafts and will overpay Osa. Not worth $10 million. I think he's definitely worth $10 million. And I don't think that's actually in any conversation. Like, you can go look at the offense or the defense tackles that they're getting $10 million. It's a bad list. Like, Justin Jones is not a good football player and got $10 million. Like, he's outright bad. The issue is he's probably going to get 15, and then it becomes 20. It's like, okay, I don't really want to give him that 20. I do think the poor defensive line drafts is a big factor in it. D-line is often slower to develop, but you had guys like Tristan Hill who just straight up never developed, and it's an issue. Lucid Chart, I think the Cowboys should sign Carlton Davis or DJ Reed or Travarius Ward. Also, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for the super chat and for watching us, Lucid Chart. I'm open to it, but I think the cornerback in general probably has to be almost a budget position for the way they're going to choose to operate. I think that Davis and especially DJ Reed are probably going to get big-time money. And if you're already paying Trayvon Diggs that big-time money, and you know you're going to pay Deron Bland big-time money down the line, and you're trying to figure out nickel, and those guys are outside corners, I think you're trying to find like a Eric Kendricks-esque contract at cornerback at most, especially if you're worried about Diggs being banged up. I don't know what Ward's market's going to look like. Maybe he could fit that mold. Maybe I think Davis coming off injury too. Maybe it's a little bit cheaper. I think you're trying to find it's not fun. I think you're trying to find a veteran bargain there to give you depth and starters if you had to play him, if your other young guys like Kalen Carson don't show growth. We don't wife these 304. Should I crash out if we draft Walter Nolan? Also, you have W. Riz. There's a Rizzler joke there that I'm just not going to make because I don't fully understand it because I'm old now. Thanks, I guess. For Nolan, crash out is a little bit extreme, but all I can do as I go through all of my draft stuff right now and get through that process and hopefully, fingers crossed, to have 100 players done by the combine. I might not. We'll see. I almost never do. I probably won't in most cases. And then like really crank it through free agency and everything else and get going. I have issues with Walter Nolan. I get why people like him. I think he is going to test incredibly well at the combine. I think he is a very gifted athlete. Depending on which games you watch, this guy looks like a top 5 player in the class. He had 13 pressures in 2 games. That's like defensive end stats. Like he had 13 pressures in 2 games, 9 in 2 others, and he also had 6 games with 0 pressure or 1. And that's just a non-start. Like, how? I think a big part of it, he's laid off the ball and late to ID plays. And we just had a big issue with that with Mazi Smith that we're still trying to work through. So, round 2, hell yeah, let's ride. Pick 12, boy, I can't get on board there. I just can't. He's my 4th defensive tackle right now. I got the 4 Nations finale tonight, USA and Canada. Type in USA if you want them to win, or C for Team Canada. I guess you can vote for Canada. I've got some anti-Canada tweets set up for tonight too, because it's fun to troll nations. Get those votes in. USA for America, C for Canada. I like seeing all the USAs flood the comment section. Keep it going for me right now. Today's Cowboys Report, we are breaking down some potential upcoming free agent targets for the Dallas Cowboys, namely 10 players who could become free agents if they are cut by their respective team. This is based on The Athletic and NFL.com's top cut candidate list. Not every name, but focusing more on some big names. Of note, cut players do not impact the precious comp pick formula teams like the Cowboys and Ravens as well value so heavily. That makes them very intriguing options because they also might be a little bit cheaper in the end. Before we get into the list, I will have plenty of free agency talk on my Twitter. When players get cut, you can expect an immediate yes, no, some capacity, and then more in depth on a video on it. Hit me up if you're on that platform at What's Going Downey. Let's begin with some wide receivers. Cooper Kupp is first up on this list. As I've mentioned before, I think there is a real chance he ends up getting cut by the Rams. He's got a significant amount of money owed. He's got a $12.5 million base salary. The Ross bonus is 7.5. The current guaranteed is 5. I think teams would have some interest in Kupp at $12.5 million, but at that point, the Rams don't really save money. They're just kind of doing the same as they would if they were to trade him, and they want to work with Kupp. There is a real chance a release comes here for the Rams receiver. And if it's not, it's probably like a late-ish, maybe day 3 draft pick. The 2021 version is not what he is anymore. It's not who he is. The 2022, 2023, 2024 guy, that's who I think you're getting. That guy has value still. Don't get me wrong. But it's not the same household name he once was. Davante Adams, next up here. Now, Adams is going to get cut. It doesn't make financial sense for anyone else to go trade for him. Adams has a $38.34 million cap hit this year. The Jets save $29.8 million with a release. They save $36.25 if they release him with a post-June 1st designation. The post-June 1st stuff, by the way, player becomes available, but it just spreads out the dead money over 2 years. I would say it's just a normal release because it's still $30 million in savings there. And the Jets knew when they traded for Davante Adams, it was a rental. It was not going to be a multiple-year thing unless they had big success and Rodgers re-signed and all that stuff. And he's got massive base salaries. He will be released. Does he want to go to the Cowboys or not? Deebo Samuel, also on, I think this one's on the NFL.com list. Kupp and Adams are on both of them. Look, Deebo is, again, contractual issues here. Very much more complicated stuff, by the way. $15.83 million cap hit. They can save nothing, really, with a release right now. Now, if they trade him, it's a little bit more palatable. They still kind of eat the same amount of money. After June 1st, it's like $5 million. He's got a big, fat roster bonus that's due. It's going to be spread over 5 years. That's why the cap hit is so low compared to just the savings there. Again, Deebo, much like Cooper Kupp, he's not the same guy anymore. His production has declined. You might have saw the Senior Bowl photo of him. He looks side profile like me. And that's not a good thing because I'm not an NFL athlete. I'm barely a golf athlete. Like, I've got concerns with Deebo. But again, if these guys are cheap, playing a receiver 2 role, especially Davante Adams, yeah, I've got interest there. So pick a wide receiver for me. CK for Cooper Kupp, DA for Davante Adams, or DS for Deebo Samuel. If you wanted to get one of those receivers, who do you want the most? Sound off the pinned comment of today's show. Let's go to the Chargers and edge rusher Joey Bosa. Now, again, this is a lot of some of the reporting you've seen is stuff like The Athletic, where they point out, hey, Joey Bosa, and this is all known information, has a $36.47 million cap hit. The Chargers saved $25.36 million with their release. So there's no reason and zero expectation the Chargers would keep Bosa on his current contract. And given the fact that he has not been that productive or healthy over the past couple of seasons, there's no reason to think they'll give him a big fat new deal. So I do think Joey Bosa ends up getting cut. Now, does he go play with his brother Nick in San Francisco? That certainly would not be a shock. But if you can get him for that mercenary edge contract that you've given out in recent years, I am very interested in him. So too with Von Miller. Now, there's off-the-field stuff that Von seemingly has managed to avoid in Buffalo and not had to face much NFL discipline, and it seems like that's in the clear. But he wanted to be a Cowboy the last time. How about this time? Bills, again, probably want to adjust that contract, as The Athletic pointed out. $23.8 million cap hit. The Bills save $8 million with the release now, $17.4 after June 1st. Again, with these other players, you got to figure out, okay, what's the medical stuff going to look like here? How healthy is Von Miller going to end up being? He missed a lot of time back in 2023. He was better in 2024, but he's not quite the same double-digit sack guy he was in his prime. But if you get 5 sacks and it's not crazy expensive and it's like third down pass rush reps, that's valuable. Other cut candidates here. I'm cheating. I'm going above 10. It's my show. I do it all the time. You guys should know by now. If I say 10, it might be more like 15. Or in this case, almost 20. Za'Darius Smith, Dre'Mont Jones, Denico Autry, kind of some hybrid stuff there. Like the Seahawks made Jones an outside linebacker. I think it's a terrible fit. I want to put him back at DT. Autry can do both coming off a suspension. Za'Darius Smith is like a really good number 2 edge rusher. Still getting up there in age, though. Not the biggest names, but worth mentioning, too. Let's go to cornerback Jaire Alexander here. Now, Alexander already been reported by ESPN, too. This was after the NFL and Athletic did their lists there. Probably not going to be back. I think there is just general frustration with Alexander in Green Bay. $25.48 million cap hit. Packers save 6.4 or 17.12 after June 1st. It's tough to have a guy who, over the past couple seasons, just hasn't been available. 7 games in 2024, 7 games in 2023, all 16 in 2022. When he plays, he's still been pretty good, but he's been really banged up, and at times, he's kind of a head case. Remember the story, I think it was last year, of him going out for the coin toss against the Panthers and just wasn't supposed to be out there and made the wrong call and tried to get the ball when they didn't want him to. And he's just yeah, he went rogue. You can't have that on a football field. The other issue is I'm looking for a reliable vet to come in and be a stopgap option if Diggs misses time. Maybe 2 injured guys would end up working out for you. Maybe 2 hurt guys equals 1 healthy guy. Now, when it comes to the offseason, whether it's a cut candidate, trade, free agency, whatever, name a player who you want to add this offseason to the Cowboys roster. Let me know in the comments section of today's show. Jonathan Allen is next up. There's been some buzz that, the Commanders might go after Osa Odighizuwa, which I find weird because they have De'Ron Payne, and they have Johnny Newton, and they have Jonathan Allen. Money is an issue here too, though. $22.5 million cap hit. The Commanders save $16.35 million with a release. Allen is getting a little bit up there in age. He missed time this year, but he's always been good. His worst year, prorated out, is better than any year Osa's had, for example. So if the Commanders do move on from Jonathan Allen, he is at the top of my list. He has a 3 technique. He can stop the run. He can get pressure. He is everything I think this team really needs, especially if they lose Osa at the 3 technique spot. Javon Hargrave is next up here. Bit of a unique situation because the Niners already said that they were going to release Javon Hargrave after June 1st. That'll save them a little bit of money. He was also common thread on this list, right? That's why guys get cut for a reason, because they're not worth their current contracts, and they don't want to get restructured or extended by their current teams. He missed a lot of time this past season. Hargrave has actually been one of the very rare, I call them 4 contract players. And he's only going to be just turned 32 years old, by the way. But he spent an entire contract's worth out in Pittsburgh. Spent an entire contract's worth out in Philadelphia for 3 years. Made it through 2 years in San Francisco. He's got the stuff I'm looking for. If you can get even just 2023 version of Hargrave, that's got a lot of value to me. Grady Jarrett, the Falcons defensive tackle. We're back. This was more of a Dan Quinn era rumor, but it makes more sense than ever now for Atlanta because of the contractual obligations they are now running into. $20.38 million cap hit. They save $16.25 million with a release. In an ideal world, they work out an extension and take that base salary, make a signing bonus, and push somebody down the line and keep him for 2 or 3 more years. But he's getting up there in age. The production has kind of fallen off. Might not be viewed as good of a fit as he was in some previous regimes. But the common trend I keep coming back to when I look at what the potential free agent defensive tackle market looks like, I think you can find somebody. We'll break down free agent defensive targets here later. There's a lot of defensive linemen I think can help you out. So of these 3 names, pick a defensive tackle. A for Jonathan Allen, H for Javon Hargrave, or J for Grady Jarrett. You want one of those 3 guys? Who is it? Let me know in the comments section of today's show. A little bit more convo here on the defensive line. If you lose Osa because he's too expensive, okay, it's fine. I get that. I'm not going to crash out over it. I need then 3 more players, and one of them has to come through free agency, probably 2, and 1 through the draft. Some other notable defensive tackle cut candidates: David Onyemata, again a Falcons defensive lineman. Maybe he fits, maybe he doesn't. Larry Ogunjobi's in that mercenary stage. Raekwon Davis' size actually does fit what Matty Eberflus has had at times in the NFL. He could be a possible option for you. Always like Dalvin Tomlinson. I'll make note of Sheldon Rankins. He was a disaster for the Bengals to the extent that he missed a lot of time with an illness. I don't know if it was an illness or a don't come around the team anymore stuff. There's lots to be vetted on that front. Now, we will have more Cowboys free agency offseason coverage for you right here on the channel. So do not miss out. Hit that sub button. youtube.com/CowboysTV. Finally, it is a Matt Eberflus player. That is Tremaine Edmunds, the linebacker here. Edmunds is, I think, had higher hopes in Chicago than what they've gotten so far. I asked our Bears host, Harrison Graham, because NFL.com also mentioned TJ Edwards, and that seems really unlikely. He's on a pretty team-friendly deal, so it seems like it's not going to happen. Edmunds has been, quote, contract is very good and has been pretty underwhelming. Bears can save a bit of money there. The tackle numbers have been solid, but you'll notice some of the splash plays have gone down a little bit. The TFLs have gone from 7-6 in 15 and 13 games to 5-3. The depth of target's kind of gone the wrong way. The coverage stuff, frankly, hasn't been as good. Here's the bright side specifically for Tremaine Edmunds. Even though he has been in the NFL for several years now and has made it through his entire rookie contract with the Buffalo Bills and spent 2 years in Chicago and was a 2018 first-round pick, he's 26 years old. There are prospects in this year's draft older than him, which is an insane statement to think about there. If he gets cut, I think he's a top option because of the connection and probably the likely cheapness there. But maybe he stays in Chicago. Who's to say? We will have more coverage for you, and I'll have it on my Twitter as well. Go follow me at What's Going Downey. Probably follow me for WRiz as well, which is, I don't know. I feel like I'm not the right generation to be saying that. I feel like I'm acknowledging that I'm not. I have a wife and kid. I feel like I shouldn't. I feel like once you have a kid, you don't get to say you have Riz anymore. Fair? No? I don't know. Zach Crosby. Can't wait to watch the Chuck Bros introduce the Canadians to the Union. Those two are beautiful Americans. I think their dad got in a huge fight with Canada players one year too, so I appreciate that he's kind of continuing that one. Let's save this one. We don't wife these 304s for the mailbag because I don't want to put out a Four Nation super chat and then they lose. That'd be kind of a disaster in the end or be outdated. So, all right, it's mailbag time. Use hashtag Cowboys or super chat to get on the show. Lance Dunbar's burner sounds like somebody sounds like what someone with Riz would say. Too old for that. I did not have any game as a college kid either. I did not have Riz. I'll promise you that. I did not. You can ask my wife. She knows I did not have it. Get your questions in via hashtag Cowboys or super chat to skip the line all together on today's show. Hashtag Cowboys or super chat. Only one super thanks today, so if you do want to get those questions in, great time to use hashtag Cowboys or super chat. A super thanks to begin today's show from Joseph. Get rid of Donovan Wilson and draft Billy Bowman. I always appreciate, by the way, when people have a plan in place for I'm going to do this and this as how to address my needs there. Now, Joseph might be an Oklahoma fan. That's perfectly fine. I do like a lot of what Billy Bowman brings, especially in coverage. He's a very different player than Donovan Wilson. Wilson is a hitter. I wouldn't really consider Bowman to be much of a hitter, especially given how much deep free safety stuff he played. Might be a Malik Hooker replacement in the end. He's got to be a better tackler, though. He missed a lot of tackles this year. But I appreciate the plan element. And if you get him you have no fourth round picks, so it kind of sucks. If he's there in the fifth, it's kind of like I'm sprinting to the podium. Now, that came in via Super Thanks. It's a feature here on YouTube. Allows you to edit your message, send it in, whatever, donate outside of live videos. Click the thanks with a $sign in between it. Edit your message and send it in. Even if you're, say, F you, Tom, we will, which someone did do one time. It was very funny. We'll give you a shout out on the show. From We to Wife These 304s, I think we signed Zekel. I'd crash out. Yeah, one-day contract to retire. I don't think any NFL team is adding Zeke with the assumption of this guy can be a top 2 back for us anymore. It's 2025. We have enough of it. We have more than enough data and can use our eyeballs properly to know he's just not the same guy anymore. So one-day contract to retire, I'm down. Lucid Chart, would you trade for Dominique Davis from the Steelers? Interesting name, who also, if I'm remembering correctly, was a Bengal, by the way, for as a defensive lineman. I'm probably not trading for him. He's kind of been a bit of a journeyman defensive lineman. And I'm right, he was the Bengals there for a while. He was on a futures deal, so I'm not trading for him for the Steelers. He might not even make Pittsburgh's roster. From Chastity, does the salary cap increase? What kind of name is? That's actually really mean of me to say. I don't know why I said that. I take that back. We might need to edit that one out in post. Does this, because it's Cassidy with an A. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was very mean of me. Does the salary cap increase impact Micah Parsons, and would you trade him? So two different questions there. Increase impact? I don't think so. He was already going to get big money. That has not changed. And I think that you've probably already allocated the amount of money it's going to cost to pay him. So that increase means, okay, now we get a couple extra $1 million to pay somebody else. Well, would I trade him? No. I don't think you find players of that caliber. Like, that is a guy I build my defense around. Like, yes, it's expensive. I don't really care. Like, Steelers should not have traded TJ Watt. You know, unless the player is throwing a fit and trying to demand his way out like Myles Garrett. Like, I keep that guy, and I build my team around him on that side of the ball. So what would you do with Micah Parsons? P for pay, T for trade. Let me know in the comment section of today's show with the pinned comment. The ad comes here on YouTube. Take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. From Jace, Cowboys drafting Jalen Walker. So, he's one of the tougher players for me in this year's class. I am most interested in him as a pass rusher. I think that is what he does best. I think if he's an off-ball linebacker, I think he's a Frankie Luvo-style player. He might be like Clay Matthews. Also a bit worried he might be more of a Bruce Irvin, where he's not really a great run stopper. Now, Bruce Irvin put up big sack numbers for you, was fine. I also think with Micah Parsons, if you're making him an edge, it's really light on the outside. And you're kind of very skinny unless you're playing a lot of five-man fronts and putting those guys as like your 3-4 outside linebackers, which is fine for me. So I got a first, second round grade on him. I think he's going to test really well. I think there's a little bit of like, the big question is, do you think he is a tweener, which is a real concern, or is he a hybrid? You have a hybrid, really good. You got a tweener, it's just not as good. Maybe you try him as like an early down off-ball linebacker and plays edge on third downs. I struggle with him at times. Not because I'm not interested, not because I don't think he's talented, but I think you have to have a good plan in place. And he might have more success at a place like Carolina, for example, where they can build the defense around him, as opposed to Dallas, where, okay, you're already building the defense around Micah, now might get a little bit, too many cooks in the kitchen type of deal. For Mark, would you trade for Garrett Wilson with the number 1 pick? I think in the top 2 receivers in the draft would be better and cheaper and slightly younger. Garrett Wilson's tough for me because if I did not have CeeDee Lamb, I would be screaming to go trade my first round pick for Garrett Wilson. Give me him. There's my number 1. I can pay him too. You can pay, because if you're trading the first rounder, I want more than 2 years out of him. Maybe 3 years. That's kind of just not good investment on what that pick could potentially be. If I can get it for my 2, in a heartbeat. My guess is the Jets are simply just not going to trade Garrett Wilson. The issue was Rodgers there. He's gone now, so I think that relationship will be fine between the team and the player. I don't think Luther Burden or Tet McMillan are going to be as good as Garrett Wilson, but they would be significantly cheaper for 4 to 5 years, and I think that is a big factor there. If I can get it for the 2, I do it. In the end, I think he's probably just not enough of a realistic target with Rodgers on his way out. Today's show is made possible by PrizePicks. It is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks and get in on the action in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. I always advise the flex play. That way, if you get one wrong, you're fine. Still cash out in the end. Our boy Jack already cooked up this baseball PrizePicks slate. The Duran pick is with more than homers, it's a homer pick because he's a Boston fan. But I like going more thans on season-long PrizePicks slates because if they're healthy, they're going to get there. So go download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS. to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you get that $50 after after you play your first $5 lineup. It's PrizePicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. For Mark, if we nab the top receiver or Wilson and nab a stud receiver in round 2, which many running backs is so deep, our offense will be a huge upgrade. Our tackles have to improve. I am optimistic, hopeful, maybe it's copium and hopium, to be fair, that the new coaching staff on the offensive line, Clayton Adams, Connor Riley, will get better play out of your tackles. Coaching matters. I don't think you had a great offensive line coach in Mike Solari. Historically, he did a pretty good job with interior alignment, not so great at tackle, so maybe that's just a trend for him. I don't know if you need 2 receivers in the top 2 rounds, like a big-name guy and a third. I think you could probably survive there. But if you're adding multiple impact pieces on offense, then yes, absolutely your offense is way better. And if you can be able to run the ball when teams dare you, which they haven't been able to for like 3 years now, that would also be a pretty big deal. Ecuador man, all the cap does is give Jaire more money. You're not wrong. It does raise the cap floor they have to spend, which they kind of already get to. They've been a little bit close on it. It's not fair. You just can't really do it this way. It's not fair. If you pull away the quarterback contracts, cash spending wise, they're not very high. Pull away all quarterback contracts, they're like league-ish average. From Riley, why are the Cowboys still the betting favorite for Miles? I think there's a super chat on Myles Garrett too. If you want to go to that one real quick here, kind of tie these two together with CTs here. As it relates to Myles Garrett, because CT's also asking, what if we gave the Browns the 12th pick and next year's first for Myles, draft running back later? I know with money gets tough. I'm just casual. I think that's about the cost, frankly, is 2 ones. That is a superstar edge rusher who is top 3 at his position and is still going to have a full contract for you. The money gets tough because you can if you want to, but should you pay 2 pass rushers $35+ million per year? Now, it's not going to hit the cap. And if you were to do something actually aggressive like that, what you should do is go all in and say, I don't care about 2029. Garrett's going to be older by then. Dak's deal will be up. I don't care about 2029 at that point. I am leveraging every contract I can. I'm pulling every lever, and I'm spending, way more cash than I ever have. That's not how the Cowboys, unfortunately, do business. So in general, what is the % chance the Cowboys trade for Myles Garrett? Let me know in the comments section of today's show. Du Bois, Cowboys takes on trading back for Luther Burden. I'm all for it. In general, this draft class is going to be very divisive. I know people who, like me, are very high on Luther Burden. Daniel Jeremiah did not have him in the first round of his mock draft. I think he's awesome. I think he is a big play yak generator. DJ's come to Stephon Diggs. I think if he can do more down through the did at Missouri, I'm really intrigued by that too. I like his game a lot. He's a really good football player. I think he fixes your number 2 receiver role. He did some outside stuff in 2022. Lamb can do outside stuff too. You can put guys in the slot. You can be creative. I would be all for it. Trade down and get Luther Burden. I love that. From Frankie, can Mason Graham fall to Dallas? Yes. Anything's possible. Will he? Almost certainly not. I think Mason Graham is the 3rd best player in this year's class. I think if you're looking for one of those upper echelon guys to fall down to you, maybe it's a Tet McMillan. Maybe it ends up being I think Genty could very well fall to you. I don't think Mason Graham's going to get to you, though, as much as I would like that. Who is your dream first-round Cowboys draft pick? Semi-realistic there. Let me know in the comments section of today's show. Cowboy Rob 28, hoping for an overhaul at safety, but do you think Hooker is a lock to stay because of his familiarity with Matt Eberflus in Indy? I think Eberflus made a comment, didn't put it in the other show this week, that hey, we got a bunch of good safeties here. That wouldn't shock me. Hooker was there from 2017 to 2020. Flus was there from 2018 to 2021. Now, in that time frame when Hooker was available, he had a couple interceptions those first couple years, and then he got hurt. He's a different player than he was in his prime in Indy. I think the injuries have been a factor that's kind of sapped a bit of his athletic ability. My suspicion is the Cowboys are going to treat safety like we like our guys, and they're just going to hold them for another year. I wouldn't say it's a lock. Maybe things could change, but if I had to guess right now, in February 20th on today's live show, I think he's back. Do you like our Cowboys mailbags? If so, do me a favor, subscribe. Hit that sub button right now, youtube.com/CowboysTV. Unitive, what do you think of trading Trayvon Diggs for 2 second-round picks and signing Kendall Fuller? It's a plan. No one's going to do it, though. No one's trading 2 seconds for Diggs coming off a bad knee injury. It's just and a big cut. It's just not going to happen. Diggs isn't going to go anywhere. Unless you, salary dump him, which doesn't save you any money anyway. Diggs will be here in 2025, and hopefully he's healthy and looks more like the good version we've seen of him. Eberflus made a comment about wanting to play more man coverage too, which I think is he sees what Diggs and Bland can do. But I don't think you're going to trade him for 2 seconds. But signing Kendall Fuller as a stopgap option, if Diggs isn't healthy, I am still on board with that one too. Hunter M. Look at this last one here. Value to trade back, say 5 to 10 spots. A lot of this depends on, what is the interest level from other NFL teams? How much interest are you getting? If you move down, looking at the rough trade value chart here, that's why I'm looking down off my screen here. You trade down to 16, 17, somewhere in that ballpark. You're kind of in that late-ish third-round range. Now, I make note of that because you moved down and got way better value from the Lions a couple years ago. So if you get a team, you could be in that range where maybe you're low on first-round grades. Maybe you don't have a first-round grade you love, and maybe you're out, and other teams behind you are. Maybe there's somebody wants to come up and go get. If you want to trade down to the 10-spot range to where the Steelers basically are, at that point you're looking at kind of that mid-second round range. When at that point, the Steelers, maybe it's more the Chargers first and second works out fairly decently to come up. A 1 and a 2. Just depends on how far you want to move back and what the interest is. It does take 2 to tango. All right, what is the trust level right now in the Dallas Cowboys? Scale this for me from 1 to 10 in the comments section of today's show. As your votes get in, I'm going to sip some water here. Hold on. The more I talk, the more thirsty I get. Go figure how that tends to work out these days. Plus, try to hydrate better. It's important. Confidence level in the Cowboys. Scale it for me from 1 to 10 in the video, or in the comments, I should say, of today's video. 100, 1, 6, negative 420, negative 69, negative 6.9, 5, 5, negative 6, negative 6, 0, 5, 4, 7, 1. Yeah, it's not. The blind faith department has probably been maxed out a little bit, and I think that's perfectly reasonable in the end. We have already broken down some top offensive free agent targets for the Dallas Cowboys. Now we're breaking down defensive targets. Once again, I'm going 30 players that stand out to me as, not the most expensive, still kind of expensive to an extent. Some cheaper options, some guys I think could fit in the end. So which side of the ball do you think gets more additions during free agency? Just pure volume of outside players signed. O for offense, D for defense. Let me know, in the comments section of today's show. Milton Williams, Khalil Mack, Josh Sweat, Zach Bond, DJ Reed, Byron Murphy, those types of guys, I think are probably going to be too expensive. I think they're just going to be a little bit out of the Cowboys' preferred price range. Maybe someone like Mack isn't as expensive because he's old, but he's still playing at a pretty high level. I think those guys are going to get too much for the Cowboys' self-imposed budget. The area I am most intrigued by this offseason is the defensive tackle spot. You got Mazi Smith. Okay, that's one guy that'll be on your team come week 1, and giant question marks at the other 4 spots. You're going to roster defensive line. And if you lose Osa, you got to sign, I believe, multiple defensive line. In fact, I want to sign 2 if we include Osa or not. It's one with Osa, two without. So first up on my list is Javon Kinlaw. I think there are connections here. Aaron Whitecotton, his D-line coach in New York, is his D-line coach would be his D-line coach in Dallas. Had his best year ever with the Jets under Aaron Whitecotton. His frame, that 6'6" frame, fits pretty well with what at times Flus has liked in the past. If you lose Osa, from a cost perspective, it'd be like a fraction of it. That name stands out to me. B.J. Hill, the Bengals defensive lineman, has been a long-time player. There's a 9-0 chance that the Bengals throw money at Osa and you just sign B.J. Hill and kind of swap defensive linemen. Not as good this past year. Maybe he wasn't deployed quite the way he had been in years past, but he had a pretty big fall-off in sacks and quarterback hits as the Bengals' defense in general was really bad. But as a buy low veteran option, and you draft a young guy early, could make some sense. Levi Onwuzurike, the Lions defensive lineman. Again, there's had some injury stuff in the past that caused some issues in terms of being able to play, but he showed some good stuff down the stretch this past year, and that intrigues me. He's not going to be an elite sack getter, but I need a nose guard, and I need a 3 technique. And my ideal nose guard, and has been this way for 3 years now, really longer than 3 years, Poona Ford for the Chargers. He's a founding target of Fatties Only. When we first did that stuff, I'm like, bring me Poona Ford. He's not a liability against the pass. He's kind of in that cheap journeyman stage, even though he always produces pretty well. I think he's one of those undervalued players by the NFL that stand out to me. Would I rather, for example, I thought about this a lot. I'm the meme of, I'm laying in bed with the wife and she's thinking about, he's thinking about other women. It's like, would I rather have Osa or Poona Ford, like a Javon Kinlaw or a Hill or something, or a Javon Hargrave, and a linebacker? Like, that's what I think about at night. So how many defensive tackles do you want to sign in free agency? I think it's 2. And I want to draft somebody as well. Let me know in the pinned comments of today's show, especially the ad comes here on YouTube. DJ Jones, the Broncos defensive lineman. Again, a guy we've discussed in years past. I'm not looking at Milton Williams because I think he's going to be too expensive, like I mentioned. Jones has played for the Niners, then was in Denver. Didn't quite put up the same level of production as he did in San Francisco, but there's the Aaron Whitecotton connection with DJ Jones again. So I think that one is also worth mentioning too. Some under-the-radar names that aren't as big of household options. Bobby Brown III from the Rams, who the Cowboys had some semblance of draft interest in a couple years ago. Didn't work out timing-wise. It's a run stopper. He's 6'4", 324. Big boy. Can take on some two-gap stuff. Can do the A-gap. Gives you, Mazi Smith insurance. If not, is a better player right now. Byron Cowart of the Bears. Another Matt Eberflus connection here. He had his best year ever after kind of being okay-ish. In New England, had a couple sacks, a couple TFLs, as like he might be more of like a backup 3 technique, but again, that's a piece along your defensive line. Calais Campbell is, I don't know how he does it. He's old. Like, Calais Campbell should not be able to be performing at the level he continues to produce at. He still gets TFLs. He still gets sacks. He's 38 years old. He's 3 years younger than his head coach was this past year. He was a 2008 draft pick, and he's still putting up 12 TFLs and 5 sacks a season. I am very impressed by how he keeps finding ways to stay around. I think he's a great locker room guy, too. It's a 1-year deal. Maybe he wants to stick in Miami or go to a true contender, but that stands out to me because he hasn't really slowed down yet. At some point he will, but it's not there yet. Jaron Reed, the Seahawks defensive tackle, is next up here on this list. Again, I think this is a solid piece. Not a superstar piece, but it gives you stability. And then you can still draft somebody. 4.5 sacks, 5 TFLs. Pretty consistent with what he's done over the course of his career, too. Another under-the-radar name is Sebastian Joseph Day. And he's done a lot of 3-4 defense stuff in recent years. I think he can still make that work in the end. This is a dirty work guy. He's not going to put up big-time numbers. He's not going to get you 5 sacks a year. He'll get you a couple, but he'll be a good run stopper for you. I think you need better run stoppers on the interior. So name a free agent, we'll say defense here, who you want to sign. Let me know in the comment section of today's show. The Cowboys once, I wasn't surprised by it because they had their size stuff. They drafted Kelvin Joseph once over Asante Samuel. They can now fix that mistake. Now, I'm curious what Samuel's market looks like. Coming off an injury-plagued season, only played a couple games, has been a little bit more inconsistent than what I'd like. There's been some good games and some bad games out of Asante Samuel. But if you want to maybe get him cheaper, because I think you're looking cheap at corner with what you have on the roster and some of the injury stuff and Trayvon Diggs being healthy and whatnot, I think Samuel is a upper echelon contract option for you. You could always simply bring back an old friend in Stephon Gilmore, who I think will once again be on that 1 year kind of journeyman contract stuff. That's what he's been doing. Carolina, Indy, Dallas, Minnesota, still serviceable. I don't think he's a superstar. He's not the defensive player of the year that he once was. But if he wants to come be a cheap stopgap this time around, maybe a reunion could make some sense. Jonathan Jones, the Patriots corner. Again, I'm looking buy low here because I'm going to spend my available money elsewhere. Kind of wasn't as good this year. And I do get a little bit worried in general about corners who look awesome with Bill Belichick and then kind of struggle without him. That's a red flag for me. And from 4 interceptions to 0 the past 2 years. He's got some inside-outside flex that I do value. Travarius Ward, the former Cowboy legend, under the radar all-time bad trade. They traded him for a backup Parker Ersinger, however you pronounce his last name, and didn't play a snap for him. Was a disaster. Had a lot of unfortunate stuff going on personal-wise. Lost his daughter. It was not good. Just tragic incident there. Sounds like he just doesn't want to go back to San Francisco, kind of wants to move and get a fresh start there. Maybe come back to Dallas could be an option for him. Money's going to be the question mark there. And then I said, why not put in one more old friend? You guys remember Michael Jackson? Not the singer. The Hurricanes corner who the Cowboys spent like a 5th-round pick on. He started for Carolina last season. He had 17 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, 76 tackles. Also high tackle numbers for a corner. I mean, he got beat a lot in coverage. But as like a cheaper stopgap option, who I think is less expensive than like a Rasul Douglas or something, Jackson stands out. Let's go to linebackers here. I'm still hopeful about DeMarvin Overshown long term, but I can't trust him to start, especially week 1. I like Maurice Leafau. It's going to be nickel heavy under Eberflus. I need another week 1 starter. Now, Nick Bolton would be a multi-year starter for me. I like his game. I like him as a run stopper. I think he flies around to the football. He'll get in the backfield. He's not the best in coverage. That's okay. I've got a good coverage linebacker in Overshown, and even Leafau flashed some decent things there. But he's expensive, and more than what the Cowboys have paid in the past. I am very curious what the market looks like for Dre Greenlaw. I love him. He was awesome in 2023. In fact, if he does not get hurt, the Niners might have won that Super Bowl that year. That was a massive loss for them. He is a tackling machine who's good in coverage, good instincts, barely played this season. He'll probably take a 1-year deal. The question is how much. Now, Robert Spillane also has a non-household name. Probably won't be overly expensive. You could probably get him on a 2 or 3 year deal for $5 or $6 million per year. And he kind of put up low-key, underrated numbers. Good TFL numbers, good pass breakup numbers. He's bounced around. I kind of thought he was much better in Vegas than he was in Pittsburgh. I'll give him credit for that. I thought he took a step forward. He could be an under-the-radar option for you. Tyrell Dodson. Now, this is kind of more of a weak side linebacker than a middle linebacker, and you got to figure out what you want in your middle linebacker if you think it's Leafau, Overshown, or what. Played for both the Seahawks and the Dolphins last year. He didn't fit what Seattle was trying to do. I think that was just the GM and head coach weren't on the same page yet of what they wanted skill-wise. Was fine in Miami, though, and was really intriguing in Buffalo, too. Again, buy low options here. And then there is another Matt Eberflus connection. That is E.J. Speed, the Colts linebacker, who has, this is the type of, career statistics you normally want to see. Okay, he's kind of doing some stuff for me in 2021 after, kind of being a little bit slower to start his career and the stats and everything. He was there in 2019, by the way, with Flus. Then kind of doubles those tackle numbers in 2022, and then doesn't quite, but kind of almost doubles them again in 2023, and then has 142 this past season. And he's gone from a player that was like a special teamer that wasn't really contributing, was kind of just a pure backup to he's a starter. And I think clearly fits what Flus wants. He's like 6'4", 227. He was, 7 tackles his first year. Now he's at 142. He's on the right side of 30 for now, at least. Could be an option for you. And we'll have more Cowboys free agency coverage. Updates, news, rumors, signings. We'll be live for free agency too. Hit that sub button so you don't miss out. YouTube.com/CowboysTV. I want to mention Edge too. You have Micah. You'll get Sam Williams back healthy. Fingers crossed. You have Marshawn Kneeland. That's not enough. You need to re-sign or go sign somebody else. I doubt they'll spend big money here because they're already paying Micah big money. But Hassan Reddick is not going to be expensive now. He's going to be cheaper than what he would have been if he just signed the contract extension the first time around. He kind of messed that one up. He was not good this year because you can't miss half a year, calendar year, for it to be good again. You might be able to buy low on him, though. Who I liked him a lot in Carolina, in Arizona, in Philadelphia. I am willing to try that one again in the end. Baron Browning is next up here. That is the Broncos edge rusher who was also a Cardinals edge rusher as well. Kind of got traded. I should have said Cardinals on that front. That's my fault. He was better in 2022, 2023 as a what I tend to call a disruptor. That was a disruptor option for the Broncos of being able to get pressures and generate some success and have an impact, not so much in the stat sheet with sacks, but in the impact. You felt his presence out there on that side of the ball. All right, Dante Fowler, the edge for the Commanders. An old friend again. He'll be a free agent coming off a career year in Washington. Finished a bit more frequently than what he had in the past. In the past. 10.5 sacks. I still don't think he's going to be overly expensive because he's kind of been on that journeyman contract. The past couple seasons, something tells me he just wants to, go get paid as best as possible. That might not end up being with the Dallas Cowboys in the end. But if you want that mercenary edge, I still think he kind of fits that mold. I think that's valuable there. All right, Matthew Judon, the edge from the Falcons, is next up here. He, frankly, wasn't good. I don't really know how else to describe what just happened this past year for Matthew Judon. He had 10.5 sacks, or 5.5 sacks, 4 sacks after 15 back in 2022 and 4 sacks in 4 games. His play, frankly, fell off a cliff. I don't really know how that happened, to be honest. I don't understand how he regressed so significantly on that side of the ball. And at this age, that's a pretty big concern for me. And it may or may not improve as he moves forward. And then there's K'Lavon Chaisson, the edge, most recently of the Raiders. He's also bounced around a variety of teams. I put him on here, as we have in years past, because that was a player the Cowboys liked a lot coming out. Remember, it was down between him and CeeDee Lamb. Now, he put up better numbers this past year with the Raiders. He had 5 sacks after 4 combined his previous 2 seasons. That is not something that I would necessarily overlook. And maybe you think he's finally kind of hitting his peak, hitting his prime a little bit, and kind of getting more to the guy I thought he could be coming out of LSU. It is also worth mentioning he's still pretty young. I think he turns 26 in July. I think that's his age. That's noteworthy to me. What is your biggest need on defense? For me, it's defensive tackle. But what do you think is the Cowboys' single biggest need? Let me know in the comment section of today's show. Safety. This would require you to make moves away from other players. Because right now, you don't need a safety. You have Malik Hooker. You have Donovan Wilson. You have Wayne Thomas on an exclusive rights deal. You have Marquise Bell there as well. You don't have to go get a safety. But if you're cutting Hooker or Wilson, then you got some money to go play with there. Javon Holland very much didn't have the year that I think anyone thought he was going to. He kind of struggled, frankly, this past season. His numbers went down. His overall play, even beyond the stat sheet, very much went down. And that's a concern for me in the end. But might make it more affordable than it would have been, this time last year. Trayvon Merrick is next up. I wanted him coming out of TCU. I was hoping they were going to take him over Kelvin Joseph. They got sniped by the Raiders. Kind of has steadily shown, I think, growth over the course of his career. He had a big uptick in production really the past 2 seasons. Talented player, I believe. I think fits the free safety. If you cut Malik Hooker, I am very intrigued by what you potentially have in the back end if the money works out. Which again, it may not, especially at safety. They're pretty cheap there. That's why I don't think Hufanga is going to be a fit for them. All right, next up is Justin Simmons, the Falcons safety. He also wasn't as good this past year. He kind of took a step back. The entire Falcons defense had some issues, so that might not be just the Simmons thing. But the first year hasn't had at least 3 interceptions, by the way, too. Tackles went down slightly, but I'm not really overly concerned there. Tackles. He's getting up there in age, though. But again, as a veteran, reliable piece, draft someone else, or groom Wanya Thomas some more, stands out. Elijah Molden, who can do nickel stuff for you as well. Safety. That's an option. He kind of found a groove finally in LA. He was kind of not playing the way I thought he should have been playing in Tennessee. Goes to LA, has a career year, much like Christian Fulton. Funny how that worked out. 2 guys I liked a lot there. Another cheap veteran is Quandre Diggs. That is the Titans safety who's coming off an injury, by the way. Maybe looking to retire in the not-too-distant future, but maybe he wants to come home for 1 year. Because I think that's all it'd be. It'd be a 1-year deal, cheap deal, stopgap option, and then, draft someone day 3 or, next year or whatever. Just gives you some variety with what you have available in free agency. For Mark, Tom, master of football, why is Jerry Jones such a leap? Earlier I meant stud background. So that's what I thought. Okay, that makes more sense then. Then I'm fully on board there. Now we're talking. Those number 4s for QB and receiver were a waste. D-line receiver picks have sucked. Lamb worked out for you. The other issue is you're really not D-line you've just missed, and that's an issue. Some of those receiver picks have been late round picks, like Flournoy and Brooks and Brown. Those are 7th rounders. Like Tolbert's been this past year was probably about what you're normally going to get out of a 3rd round pick. You just wanted it earlier not to be so bad at the start of his career. But I agree. Trading a 4th for Mingo and for Lance, like what are we doing? Especially the Mingo one, I'm like, this is not a fit. They said that it was leaked that they had a 3rd round grade on him. Give a 4th for him? A 5th, you could have been like, okay, that's kind of rich, but you have 4 of them. That 4th round pick trade for Mingo was just like, why? We all knew it was going to be a high pick. You can get a decent player there. And now you're banking on Mingo being what he hasn't been so far in the NFL. What side of the ball do you think needs more help? O for offense or D for defense? Let me know in the comments section of today's show. O for offense, D for defense. What do you think needs the most help on which side of the ball? O or D? You can let me know in the comments section of today's show. Now, we've been live throughout the year on Monday and Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3:50 p.m. Eastern time. We'll go live again on Monday. Thursday is to be determined. We're going to have combine coverage from Indy, may or may not be live. Depends on how the internet holds up, especially at the combine. It sucks. We're working on alternative options there. So TBD, but we will be live on Monday